G'day legends, I hope that you're all having a fantastic day. Now today we're going to talk about some aircraft, look at the maps and some other little bits and pieces about the offensive. Now I'll definitely try and keep this video a bit shorter, and I forgot at the end we'll talk about an assassination attempt, or at least planning against President Zelensky. So we're going to start with the Ministry of Defence update. Now I know a few of you guys don't like this, but I think this will add into what we're going to talk about next. The Russian Air Force continues to consistently deploy considerable resources in support of land operations in Ukraine, but without decisive operational effect. Over the summer, Russian tactical combat aircraft have typically carried out over 100 sorties a day, but these are almost always restricted to operating over Russian-controlled territory due to the threat from Ukrainian air defences. Russia has attempted to overcome this issue by increasingly using basic free-fall bombs with range-extending glide attachments. Aircraft can release these many kilometres from their targets, but they have yet to demonstrate consistent accuracy. So there's a few little bits and pieces in here. Russia still are having many sorties from aircraft and are losing less aircraft than we saw in the beginning due to operating behind their line, and as well, using now these glide bombs. Now this is one of the things we've talked about with aircraft coming in from the west, is if these Russian fighters, bombers still sit within Russian, internationally recognized Russian territory, then they're basically safe, that we're not going to be able to use the missiles or these to actually then intercept them. And this is what the bombers are doing. The bombers are firing whatever just from outside the territory, going from there, and then we're using these glide freefall bombs. Now there's many advantages to using freefall bombs like this. One, way cheaper than some sort of missile, and as well it's not going to be hit by the electronic warfare the same. So there are definite advantages to that too, but the main one being the cost and how much stuff Russia has to actually then do that with, as well as other advantages. At the start of Ukraine's southern counteroffensive from June 23, Russian attack helicopters proved effective. However, in recent weeks, Russia appears to have been less able to generate effective tactical air power in the south. And we're going to talk about these choppers, and reached out to a friend of mine who's sent me some stuff back, who's an expert on these choppers. Now, in that, it's confirmed today by both Ukraine and Russian sources that a Russian Ka-52 attack helicopter has also been taken down. Now, this chopper here, I always like to just mention this. These have ejection seats, so their bloody props blow off, and then you can actually eject from here, which I am always thinking is pretty fucking hectic. So we'll look here. This is a Ukrainian Mi-24. This footage has come out of it then coming in super low here, firing off its missiles and its flares, launching an attack against Russian positions. Now, I don't know exactly where this is, but I thought this was a fairly impressive video, and nice lighting at the sunrise or sunset here as well. To pull up hard. And these are, the Mi-24, they are a very scary looking chopper. I don't know if it's just I've played too much Call of Duty or it's just me. I think they're a very intimidating looking aircraft. That Ukrainian chopper then passing there. So there's been a lot of focus on fighter aircraft, being these F-16s, F-18s. But I'm actually surprised there's not more for modern attack choppers, like Apaches or maybe even the retired Tigers from Australia, although I don't think anyone really wants that. But say with the Apaches, a shitload of countries operate them, especially countries that are allied with Ukraine. And seeing the success that Russia is actually having with the Ka-52s against armour, I'm wondering why this isn't something that Ukraine is asking for more. Now, we have seen the Ukrainian intelligence posting videos of their UH-60 Black Hawk here as well. Now, there are many rumours that that has participated in combat yet, but I have yet to see any video confirmation. Of course, any chopper like this, moving away from Soviet-era equipment to Western, does come with the same problems with the training, the logistics as fighter aircraft. But I believe that there are also a number of advantages there. So this is where I've reached out to a friend of mine here. Now, this isn't bleeped out for any OPSEC. This is bleeped out just for swear words here. YouTube doesn't like picking up on that. Anyway, so hey, mate, there are a number of advantages and disadvantages, like with everything. It's force multiplying. So you really want it to be working in conjunction with other platforms if possible. As we have seen, Russia's rotary wing aircraft are highly susceptible to MANPAD, being man-portable air defense. Although the survivability of some of those armoured choppers is impressive. And we have seen a lot of those choppers due to they've got the twin rotors on the top here. That eliminates the need, because they spin opposing, it eliminates the need for the rear rotor here as well. So we have seen them with the full back wing off them still make it back to base. So to answer your question and keep it short, my question was along the lines of what are the advantages for attack choppers to then fighter aircraft? And low-speed maneuverability attack helos are designed for close air support and ground attack missions. We fly at lower speeds and hover, allowing us to accurately engage targets in complex and urban environments where precise targeting is essential. Targeting accuracy, ability to engage targets with high precision due to their ability to hover and make precise adjustments to their position. This is particularly valuable when engaging enemy forces near friendly troops or civilian areas. The weapon loadout. While fighter jets can carry a wide variety of munitions, attack helicopters are often optimized for carrying a specific set of ground attack weapons, such as guided missiles, rockets, and autocannons. Of course, the autocannon being the big bloody gun on the front. Close air support. Attack helicopters excel at providing close air support to ground forces. The ability to loiter over a battlefield for an extended period of time allows the platform to respond quickly. The primary advantage I see is versatility and the lack of runways. Attack helicopters do not require long runways for takeoff and landing, thus allowing them to operate from confined spaces such as improvised landing zones, which can be especially useful in remote or austere environments, needing a much smaller footprint and therefore harder for Russia to target and easier to hide. There are more, but this is what comes to mind simply. But there are different tools for different jobs. Fast jets for long range, high speed are vital for striking behind lines and at altitude, especially engaging Russian missiles. But that close air support role is where choppers shine. You follow this more closely than I, but I see currently a lot of armoured movements and reliance on mines and artillery. If and when Ukraine enters cities, this will change, and the close air will become more important. In built-up areas for situational awareness and prolonged targeting, I see this as vital. But air defence and ground forces are always an issue, similar to artillery versus mortars, but are equally important and serve differently. Now, we have heard rumours before about Apaches maybe going into Ukraine, but these were sort of debunked just as rumours. And I'd like to know what you guys would think. I know none of us are experts on these platforms, or maybe some of you are, but is there a need for both the fighter aircraft and then the rotary wing for more updated ones? Because we're going to have an amount of time probably over winter where the training and all of this can take place while the battle probably stalls a bit more. Now, speaking of a lull in the battle, and before we have a look at the maps, I want to have a look at this from Mikhailo Podolyak, who of course is the advisor to the head of the office president of Ukraine, of course being President Zelensky. So let's have a look at this. Let's make this clear. Any scenario of a ceasefire or freezing of the war in Ukraine in the current disposition will mean only one thing: Russia's actual victory and Putin's personal triumph. International law will ultimately lose any force, and the law of the jungle will be introduced. War will become a tool for achieving political goals, and the number of conflicts and chaos in the world will increase dramatically. It will become clear to everyone it is possible to invade another country, occupy a part of it, organise a massacre there, and establish the right of force on this territory with the tacit consent of the world. This would be a great defeat for the Western world and the end of the current global security order. So saying here that if Russia is allowed then to just land grab Ukraine and we sort of let them get away with it in a way, therefore why would other countries not then do this? Why would China not go, well, we'll just land grab Taiwan? Now, I know that that's a lot more complex than that, but you can see that these large powers, it's almost, he's saying, a permission for this to happen. And we've spoken a lot about this before. The question is, for the sake of what? Freezing the war will not end it and will not diminish the suffering of the Ukrainian people. On the contrary, if Moscow retains half of Ukraine and goes on hiatus, it will begin preparing for the next round. And as soon as the political leaders in key Western countries change, the war will return bigger, bloodier, and better prepared. In this case, a devastated Ukraine will face this round in a much worse position and with far less obvious prospects than it could have, unless NATO members change their minds and show the political will to grant emergency membership. What is the conclusion? There can be no negotiation process in the current disposition. The status quo will be changed on the battlefield. This means more weapons, missiles, and aircraft. And I completely get what he is saying, that if this is allowed to stall out, land is given, that Russia will go away and come back eventually, like in 14, the annexation of areas, and then 2022 has come back. But is NATO about to grant emergency membership to Ukraine? In my opinion, that is just not going to, 100% just not going to happen until there is the end of the current conflict. Now, we don't know how this conflict will end yet. No one does know, but if we're 18 months in now and, there hasn't been any NATO membership with what we've seen go down, it's not about to happen, at least in my view, that Ukraine doesn't yet meet the requirements for NATO, and there is still an active, very bloody conflict going on that they don't want to draw more countries then in. But I completely understand what then he is saying. Now, I spoke to a friend yesterday who said to the effect of, if Ukraine hasn't made significant gains by the end of September, it will be next year. Meaning by the end of September, if Ukraine hasn't made significant gains, it's going to stall until next year, then it can re-pick up. Now, according to seasonsyear.com, the most rainy months are October and November in Ukraine. And then winter begins and Ukraine plummets in temperature and the snow, of course, then comes in. Now, both rain and snow are enemies of armoured movements. And the British MOD, as before, has spoken then about the foliage on the ground being an issue. And, of course, more rain, snow drying into next year, into spring again, that is just going to get even worse with then the lack of farming. So we're going to have a look at the maps, and I will say that Deep State has not updated today, and ISW, I don't have good ones from yesterday to show you, but I do have some here. So we're going to look at some updates. So, of course, this is the Deep State map. We have Ukraine, the centre, the capital of Kyiv. The red areas occupied since 22, the purple then since 14. Here's Romania, Moldova, Poland, Belarus, and Russia around here. Now, where we're going to talk about, we're just going to work our way through some of these. Now, we're going from ISW and Syriac maps and not Deep State today. Deep State hasn't updated. So we have the Syriac map near Volshana here, showing that Russia has made a lot of territory here. Now, where is Volshana? So we see where this kicks out then to the east. In the Kharkiv Oblast, we come down here, and then we'll see Volshana pop up, Volshana, Liman Pershi in here. So let's then skip across to the satellite map, and now that's loaded, we will skip across to show what then this map is showing. Now, these two maps are very difficult to line up, but let's do our best because these are obviously taken at different times of the year, and of course, the saturation is very different. So what we look at is we'll see this square paddock here, I believe this square paddock, and we see this funny shaped one here is then here. So what we do, we'll come across, we see this 45-degree kick down. I believe that is just here. So we're saying that Russia is almost up to then here. So it is difficult to get where this is, and we may see this update on the Deep State map maybe today, later on today, or tomorrow. But we just can look at where we've seen that they have pushed out from Volshana, but it's showing about the same around Liman Pershi, but as well from this Persho Traveni as well, that it does look like Russia has made more ground through here as well. Again, these aren't the best to line up, but this is why the Deep State is good and that you can scroll through day to day. Now, of course, we have actually a map from the same area from yesterday, but from Syriac maps as well. So this is showing this Volshana region, and this is then the same. So it is showing that Russia did have a major advance in this area here. Now, before we confirm anything, we need multiple sources to back up each other. So we're not 100% sure yet, but this is what Syriac maps is showing there. Now, as well, Syriac maps has showed that Ukraine has advanced near Klishkivka. Now, of course, Klishkivka is to then the south of Bakhmut. So, of course, this is Bakhmut down here, and then we'll zoom in, and Klishkivka here. So, just to the south then of Klishkivka. So we see this road, this windy road here, windy road, that Ukraine has got more ground in and around here, but I think Deep State is showing very similar to that already. So let's go then on to this map. I can see, of course, this area around this paddock. This is where that Syriac maps is saying that Ukraine then had an advance. So let's then have a look at the Rybar Russian sources in and around Bakhmut. Now, it is saying that Ukraine did have a number of pushes in and around Yahidny and Berkivka, with a number of Ukrainian ground forces having some success in those regions, although Rybar is saying that they have managed to repel them since, as well as more pushes then near Andrivka, which is to the south of Klishkivka as well. So we have Klishkivka and then Andrivka here, that Ukraine did make a number of armoured pushes there, but there's no significant change according then to Rybar Russian sources. So again, we're going to have to leave it a day or two to get an update on these. Now, the ISW, we have multiple updates from them as well, but I don't have the maps from yesterday. Russian sources claim on August the 3rd that Russian forces exert less control to the north of Robotyne. And we have seen this little spire of ground go both to and from over a number of maps. Now, we have spoken before, earlier on the August the 3rd, that Ukraine did make ground in and around Dobrova. Now, on August the 4th, Russian soldiers advanced near Krasnodarivka here, near Mariinka. And this is what was shown on Surek maps a couple of days ago, that Russia did make some ground here. And what was interesting about that, if you remember it, was actually Russia getting back ground that Ukraine had taken. Now, the interesting bit about that ground was that bit of ground was held since 14, of course, being by this black border that Ukraine had managed to push in that first bit that actually got there. But that Russia had launched an offensive there and taken back that bit of ground. Now, we don't know how significant that actually then was. So, geolocated footage posted on August the 5th indicates Russian forces captured Novoselivsk. Now, we did see that both the red and the yellow being claimed, red being assessed, did move in Russia's favour near Kamazanivka here as well. Now, Russian sources claim they moved 5 kilometres as we saw the yellow bulge out. What we really care about is then the red. And geolocated footage indicates Russian forces advanced across the Zerobits River as of August the 4th. So that is getting then confirmed a few days on. But it is interesting to know how these are moving day to day, but as well in bigger picture. But as this goes on, and I'm going to talk about this tomorrow, Russia is still building up its defensive works behind the line, but Ukraine is building up its offensive capability both in the west and behind their line as well. So where this goes, we don't know, but is there maybe 7 to 8 weeks left of opportunity? Very potentially, until the wet season really comes in. The SBU has detained a woman who they say was planning to carry out an assassination attempt against President Zelensky. And we know Ukraine has reported a number of attempts on Zelensky's life. So let's look at what then the SBU says. The SBU has detained an informant of the Russian intelligence services who, on the eve of the visit of the president of Ukraine to Mykolaiv Oblast, was collecting information on the planned events. Primarily, the woman tried to establish the time and list of locations of the head of state's tentative itinerary in the region. However, the SSU was proactive. The information on the suspect was obtained timely and additional security measures were taken during the visit. Subsequently, the SSU continued to document the enemy's accomplice's actions to learn more about her Russian handlers and assignments received. The SSU operatives established that a spy had been instructed to identify the location of the armed force of Ukraine's electronic warfare systems and ammunition depots near Ochakiv, Mykolaiv Oblast. Occupiers plan to use these data to prepare a new massive airstrike on the region. The SSU apprehended the traitor red-handed when she was trying to pass intelligence to the invaders. According to the investigation, the perpetrator is a resident of Ochakiv and used to be a saleswoman in a military shop at one of the local military units. To gather intelligence, the enemy agent drove into the target area, taking photos or video footage of Ukrainian facilities. In addition, she tried to obtain the necessary intelligence through her connections, for example, in social institutions, hoping that her acquaintances would unwittingly provide certain information. The SSU have now served the detainee a notice of suspicion under Article 11423 of the CCU. Unauthorized dissemination of information and shipment, transfer of weapons and ammunition to Ukraine, movement, transfer or deployment of the AFU. The court has chosen custody as a measure of restraint for the suspect, who is facing up to 12 years in prison. The investigation then is underway. And this is something we know. We know that there's partisans in this warfare, both in Russia, in Ukraine, and in occupied territory. And this isn't just for one side. This is for both sides. There's going to be Russian spies in Ukraine or partisans working for Russia, and vice versa. There's going to be Ukrainian partisans or pro-Ukrainian partisans or Ukraine spies working in Russian, both occupied areas and Russian territory as well. Although I don't see any advantage to Russia assassinating President Zelensky, at least this far into the conflict. Zelensky would instantly become a martyr, and the Western support would almost definitely then increase. Now, it's not Zelensky making tactical decisions. He's just the face to it. And he's become internationally recognised and praised, and I believe this would actually backfire on Russia. There's been long-term rumour that there is some agreement that neither president would be targeted, but of course this has never been proven. But what do you guys think of what we have talked about today? Now, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. If you'd like to support me, there's links below, but never feel obliged. Look after yourselves. Have a great rest of the week. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.